Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Patrick Sullivan, and I'm the President and CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. And thank you very much to Sarah Prosper for that wonderful opening performance. As you all know, February is African Heritage Month in Nova Scotia. The African Nova Scotian Affairs Office has a variety of virtual events on their calendar. In fact, tomorrow at 7 p.m., St. Mary's University is hosting a keynote with the amazing Dr. Angela Davis, moderated by Charisma Grace Walker. Don't miss out. You can register free at the events calendar at ansa.novascotia.ca. We're excited to speak with the Mayor today on his post-COVID plans for Halifax and on how we can support our businesses in their recovery and growth. The overall goal of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce is to create value and prosperity for our over 1,750 members and over 65,000 employees. Through our 2019 to 2023 strategic plan, we are providing the services they need, hosting events that will help them learn, and are advocating for the conditions in the economy that enhance their prosperity. Our task forces, fostering private sector growth and accessing a skilled workforce, are currently working towards goals that will aid in our members' prosperity and the economic growth of the municipality. In a non-COVID year, we host numerous in-person events that focus on the betterment and sustainability of our business community. One of those events would be the annual State of the Municipality with our mayor. This year, we're very pleased to be able to do this virtually and make this free for all attendees, thanks to our event partner, the Halifax Partnership, and our presenting sponsor, RBC. Thank you very much, RBC, for your support. There's no way around it. 2020 was a difficult year, and especially for those working in or owning a business in the hardest hit sectors like tourism, hospitality, and the arts. Our 2021 to 2022 pre-budget submission for the municipality focuses on the impact of COVID on the community and our businesses. And what can the government do to mitigate the impacts and improve the business environment during our recovery phase? Our submission focuses on taxation, infrastructure and housing, downtown cores, red tape, transit, and the municipal budget. On taxation, we're asking the municipality to freeze the commercial tax rate to help businesses recover from an extremely difficult year that reduced foot traffic, reduced sales, and forced closures. We've also asked they publicize the cost of services for commercial and residential taxpayers so everyone knows what they're paying for. We continue to ask for greater powers from the province for the commercial taxation system within the municipality. On infrastructure and housing, we're recommending they invest in infrastructure that can support safe outdoor activities and allow businesses to open booths or stalls for access to new and current customers in our physically distant world. We're looking for accelerated development timelines and for faster and increased housing creation to address our current housing situation. We ask the council publicize density bonusing agreements for developers to show where that money is being spent, utilized, and transferred. And we want to ensure core density for housing to replace the loss of potential customers who are now working from home. Our downtowns have suffered significantly during COVID-19. We want to ensure that current and future municipal projects do not overly impact the downtown business community who are already feeling the impacts of COVID-19 and those accompanying restrictions. We need to find new ways of making our downtown cores attractive for residents, consumers, to increase foot traffic to businesses in those areas. And of course, our favorite topic, reducing red tape. How do we continue to reduce outdated policies and reduce red tape for the business community? We should keep those that enhance the business environment, some of those changes that have happened over the last number of months. We should keep some of those and allow for economic growth that might allow for economic growth of our small to medium-sized enterprises. Our business community and the Nova Scotia Business and Labour Economic Coalition have both been extremely impressed and appreciative of the level of support and communication the municipality and particularly the mayor have shown during this period. And while we do have many recommendations for the municipality, we want to ensure that the relationships that have been developed during this difficult time are maintained. We also delve further into other issues, both COVID and non-COVID related, and we encourage you to read our full submission at halifaxchamber.com under our policy library, exciting reading for everyone, to see how you can support and improve the lives of entrepreneurs, employers, and employees across the City of Halifax. Before we welcome a very special guest, I'd like to thank the Halifax Chamber Board of Directors for their leadership during what has been a very difficult year in the last year. We are very lucky to have an engaged, knowledgeable, and supportive board. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dominique Awaiga, sorry, I just have to be careful, an extremely talented spoken word poet who was featured on CBC just a few weeks ago, and who graciously agreed to perform an opening poem for us here today. Dominique is a 13-year-old grade 8 student in Hammonds Plains. She's an activist, writer, spoken word poet, art illustrator, and the junior artist in residence for Wellness Within, a community organization working for reproductive justice, prison abolition, and health equity. Dominique is the youth entrepreneur behind Dominique Creatives, a mask-making enterprise that she launched in the middle of the 2020 pandemic. She made headlines in 2020 with her bright, colorful, and vibrant African fabric masks. Also, as a spoken word poet for the past 2.5 years, Dominique loves to write and perform spoken word poems to bring attention to social justice issues that she cares deeply about. Recently, Dominique has been posting a different famous African Nova Scotian on Twitter for African Heritage Month. Please check out her Twitter feed for a new post every day. Welcome, Dominique.
So, this is my poem, Together We Stand. We are descendants of Jamaican Maroons, Black Loyalists, Black refugees, African immigrants from the diaspora. Overflowing descendants of Oduduwa, like my people, with fast and fluent Yoruba, so we never forget the voice of our ancestors. On the shoulders of our ancestors we stand, binding together as communities of African descent. This is where we've lived, learned, and listened. Every tongue counted, every story sacred. We've gone through pain, yet we speak our own healing. Through the grace of our own survival in this land, African Nova Scotians have fought and continue to fight. Against inequities, we push on joyfully. We sing songs of victory. In spite of racism, in spite of discrimination, in spite of anti-Black racism. But y'all should know, we don't give up easily. They tried to take us out of history, but we thrived. In spite of rejection, we strive for perfection because we believe in resurrection. The ability to rise from the dust and emerge like the dawn of a new day. Together we stand and we are not afraid. The ancestors in Africville fought for their land with broken hearts and dirtied hands. From their labor, sweat, and blood we rose. From their agony and resilience we learned. In their dreams and hopes we praised. In their African churches we prayed. In their resilience we stood. In their yearning for justice we cried. They tried to silence us. They tried to suppress us. They tried to stop us from achieving. But y'all should know, we don't give up easily. We push on joyfully. Undo the chains by the power of truth-telling. With the power of activism, we sing songs of victory. In spite of racism, in spite of discrimination, in spite of anti-Black racism. But y'all should know, we don't give up easily. They tried to take us out of history, but we thrived. In spite of rejection, we strive for perfection because we believe in resilience. The ability to rise from the dust and emerge like the dawn of a new day. From Halifax to North Preston to East Preston to Hammonds Plains to Weymouth Falls to Acaciaville to Truro and all the way to Sydney. Together we stand. We are the iron nails nailed into the roots of this country. This country is just as much ours as it is yours. And together we stand.
Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Luther with Halifax Partnership, and thank you, Dominique, for your powerful words. I know that they resonated across our city when you shared them at the beginning of African Heritage Month, and thank you for sharing them with us again today. Halifax Partnership is Halifax's public-private economic development organization. We are pleased to be co-hosting today's event with the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. At Halifax Partnership, we settle for nothing less than a vibrant and successful Halifax. We grow a prosperous and inclusive city by attracting and retaining business, talent, and innovation while tracking Halifax's economic progress. Together with HRM, we co-develop and co-lead Halifax's 5-year economic growth plan. We are in the final year of the current growth plan and are beginning work to develop the next growth plan, our 4th such plan with HRM, that will chart the course and the look and feel of our city to 2027 and beyond. We are very fortunate to have the leadership of HRM on the Halifax Partnership Board of Directors through Mayor Mike Savage, CEO Jacques Dubé, and councillors Russell and Mason. As we continue to plan for growth in this most unusual COVID year, we have also retooled our programming to meet the acute needs of business and talent, guided by Halifax's COVID-19 Economic Response and Recovery Plan we co-lead with HRM. Since April 1st, 2020, together with our close partners with the province, Nova Scotia Business Inc., we have attracted 17 new companies to our city. Mayor Mike Savage is a key player in our Sell Halifax team, including welcoming these companies and their prospective employees at several virtual hiring fairs. The mayor's enthusiasm and optimism for our city is irresistible to these companies that together are forecasting to create over 1,000 new jobs in Halifax. Another major focus for Halifax Partnership is attracting and retaining talent to our city. We do this through a variety of labor programs, including the Connector program, now in its 11th year, funded by RBC Future Launch and the province of Nova Scotia. We are launching Connector Plus this spring, using technology to exponentially expand professional networking opportunities for business leaders, immigrants, and new grads. And last month, we launched the African Nova Scotia Road to Economic Prosperity Action Plan in partnership with HRM. This initiative is led by the ANS community, and we are thrilled to have RBC as our first private sector sponsor of this groundbreaking work. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Chris Ronald, Regional President for RBC and today's event sponsor. RBC has been a private sector investor in Halifax Partnership since our inception 25 years ago. RBC demonstrates their leadership in our community daily through their support of numerous diversity and inclusion initiatives, growing young talent in our region, and as a proud sponsor of today's event, as they have been for the past 9 years. I'm grateful to have Chris's leadership on the Halifax Partnership Board of Directors and our Audit and Risk Committee, and his team's active involvement in our Connector program and ANS Road to Economic Prosperity work. Chris moved to Halifax just over 2 years ago to assume leadership of RBC in Atlantic Canada, what I've heard him describe as his dream job. As regional president for RBC, Chris oversees the sales and market management for Atlantic Canada. This includes setting the direction, developing strategy, and managing the overall performance and delivery of RBC's products and services to more than 800,000 clients in our region. Since joining RBC in 1988, Chris has held a wide variety of regional and national office positions, and prior to assuming his current role in 2018, Chris was Regional Vice President of RBC's Corporate, Commercial, and Private Banking in the Caribbean Islands. Now, I know Chris is not a skier, and I suspect that he may have enjoyed their winters a little bit more than ours. But we're so thrilled to have you here in our region, Chris. A believer in community, Chris has been involved in numerous volunteer activities, particularly with the Multiple Sclerosis Society. In addition to sitting on the Halifax Partnership Board, Chris is currently on the Board of Directors of the QE2 Hospital Foundation. On behalf of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce and Halifax Partnership, thank you, Chris and RBC, for your ongoing support of the work we do together to grow Halifax. And now I invite Chris to introduce Mayor Mike Savage.
Thank you very much, Wendy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledging African Heritage Month, and I encourage our viewers to take the time to listen, learn, act, and share about Black heritage in February. It feels great to be here on site with Patrick and Wendy and our guest of honor, Mayor Savage, and of course with all of you virtually. But first, let me extend a thanks to Patrick and the Chamber and Wendy and the entire partnership team. Over the past year, you've continually impressed me with your ferocious determination to help businesses through this pandemic. Even though you and your organizations have also been impacted, you persevere with a can-do attitude. And I just wanted you both to know that your leadership and hard work has not gone unnoticed to those of us in the business community. Thank you for everything that you've done and you continue to do. Speaking of great leaders, I have the honor of being here today to introduce one of the best that I've ever come across, who last fall was re-elected to his third term as mayor of the Halifax Regional Municipality. As many of you know, Mayor Savage has accepted this invitation from the Chamber and the partnership to speak to the business community since he was elected in 2012. And RBC joined that same year as presenting sponsor. We've remained part of the event for 8 years because we believe in the mayor and his leadership. But we're also here because we believe in Halifax. Our business is invested in the city's past, in its present, and its future. The Halifax Partnership recently invited RBC to be featured in a video series they're producing called Why Halifax? The audience is businesses outside our region looking for new markets, and it's meant to encourage them to think about setting up shop right here. And I've been preparing for my interview, and as you know, it made me stop and reflect on the quality of life that we have in this city and how special it is. And it goes without saying that we live in challenging times, but honestly, I cannot think of another part of the world that I'd rather be in than right here and right now. Now, though I admit, once we've conquered COVID, I'm looking forward to a little bit of sun and a little bit of vitamin D on some beach. But aside from that, we truly live in one of the most enviable locations in Canada, and I would challenge you for the world right now. And not only do we have all the regular things that make Halifax a great place to live, like a thriving business and innovation community, easy access to great entertainment, parks, recreation, great education, low cost of living, and I could go on. We're also in a healthy and safe community. And we're able to accomplish all this because of the stewardship and support of authentic, dependable, caring leaders like Mayor Mike Savage. And I've never done it, but I'm guessing it's no small feat to run in a municipal election in the middle of a pandemic, let alone win it for the third time, plus get reelected with 80% of the vote. But that's just what he did. And I think it speaks volumes to the trust and respect that residents of Halifax have in him. And it's certainly been a challenging year, but Mayor Savage always finds a way to look at the positives and leaves us feeling inspired and proud about this place that we all call home. And that's why I've been looking forward to this event all week. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll join me from your home or your office in welcoming the mayor. Mike, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you to RBC for your continued sponsorship and your hard work in the community. I want to thank Wendy and the partnership and Patrick and the Chamber through a difficult year. They've both shown great leadership personally and as an organization in helping us get through this difficult time. We are gathered here today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the peace and friendship treaties are very important. And if you don't know about them, I encourage you to learn. I also want to acknowledge African Nova Scotia Heritage Month. You may notice this cloth here. This is a kente cloth from Africa, and it was created by Carol Ann Wright of the Halifax Partnership, and I thank her for the work that she's doing as well. You know, it's really hard to know where to begin to turn right now as we look back since I last addressed the Chamber at our annual address. The last time that we had it was a full house at the convention center, which was still relatively new. You could still smell the paint at the convention center. We entered off the newly revitalized Argyle Street in the heart of the bustling entertainment district. It was nearing the end of my second mandate as mayor, and we were buoyed by record growth, economic momentum, which meant that our collective efforts to propel Halifax's bright future were exceeding expectations. Now, last January, we started hearing warnings about this novel coronavirus. By March 15th, it was here. We all know what happened next, and I won't take you through it. But I must say that as a mayor who was accustomed to being out and about a lot and enjoying it, it was very distressing to see the quiet streets, the shuttered businesses. I think we've all felt pretty low and isolated at times, worried about loved ones, our friends, and the community. And if you add to that in Nova Scotia the horrific murders of last April, the loss of the cyclone crew, people like Abigail Cowbrough and Matthew Pike, who were known to people here in Nova Scotia, and also the death of our snowbird captain, Jen Casey. It's been a tough year. But it's also, I think, fair to say that we feel great gratitude. We feel appreciation as Nova Scotians that we have fared quite well, exceptionally well by comparison to other parts of the country and around the world. We've been transfixed daily, all of us, by the COVID counts and the updates from Dr. Strang and Premier McNeil. And low case counts are awfully good to see, although we don't have to look very far to see they can turn around quickly. But as well as the case counts, I want today, just before I sit down with Patrick, to share a few numbers about where Halifax Regional Municipality is today. So this is Halifax by the numbers, if you will. Last year we grew by 9,015 people as of July, making us the second fastest growth city in Canada, having been the third fastest the year before. Of that total, 5,751 were immigrants. They came from somewhere else in a whole other part of the world. And in fact, of that growth last year, only 876 were from other parts of Nova Scotia. A decade ago, 38% of our growth was coming from other parts of Nova Scotia. That's not a net win for the province of Nova Scotia. Our population at 448,554 is obviously a record, and it's a growth rate that sees us on track to exceed our growth targets of 550,000 people by 2031. Even more striking is the labor force data that came out last month. While employment in Canada dropped by 827,000 people, employment in Nova Scotia was pretty good, just down 0.3%. Employment in Halifax rose by 4,600. 2% growth during COVID. 4,600. That puts us number one across all the cities in Canada, both in terms of percentage and absolute terms. We lost 700 part-time jobs, but gained 5,400 full-time jobs. And here's a number, 15. I think actually as of this morning, it might be 17. The number of new companies we've attracted to Halifax since the pandemic hit. 17 new companies, over 1,000 new hires. So there's things to celebrate, but my friends, it's not happening everywhere. The tragedy of COVID is in part the inequity of COVID. Our tourism operators, hotels, our airport, restaurants, entire swaths of retail, cultural industries are facing terrible realities. There's no sugarcoating it. Businesses, in a lot of cases, are hurting. Now at City Hall, we've been working to advance and adjust to COVID while continuing to address key priorities. Here's a number, 43. That's the number of virtual council meetings, committee of the whole meetings, and budget meetings that we've had. It's different. I'm in my office, sitting at my desk, as opposed to at council. And I got to tell you, like I miss people, I miss council. But beginning with COVID, adaptations and a complete recast of our 2021 budget took place. We also made parking meters and transit free during the first wave. We expanded payment timelines for residential and commercial tax, made patio licenses free and allowed them to extend their size and their season. We also passed the ambitious Halifax climate change strategy, committing to net zero municipal operations by 2030. That's what we can control. And net zero total community-wide emissions by 2050. And as Wendy could tell you, we've had great support from members of the partnership and the chamber in those goals. We accepted the well-considered findings and the recommendations of the task force on the use of the Edward Cornwallis name. And we directed a willing CAO and staff to make sustained and lasting progress on improved race relations and anti-black racism initiatives in our places of employment and across our municipality. In October, we hit 50%. There's a number. Council gender parity for the first time. Shouldn't have taken so long, but it is what it is, and we're there now. In fact, 7 new councillors were elected. 7 new female councillors were elected in October. I think perhaps you're looking at their faces now. Get to know them. They're doing an awesome job, and I'm very proud to serve with them, as I am with all of my colleagues. We have challenges. Let's talk housing. Everything from tight rental markets to increasing property values in real estate around the supply of affordable units. 1.9% is the residential vacancy rate, up slightly from before, but nothing that we can take great comfort from. 4.1% is the average rent increase in the last year. Some progress is being made. 52 new affordable housing units being funded under the Rapid Housing Initiative, for which we thank the federal government and the province for their support on operations. 25 new affordable townhouses in Dartmouth North from the provision of surplus municipal land. Council and planning staff are working hard to approve new units throughout the municipality, working with our developers to try to keep pace with our growing population. Look at these approved units in the last 3 years. 3,100 in 2018, just over 4,000 in 2019, and even during COVID, almost 4,000 last year. It's a marked acceleration. For context, our regional plan targets 1,200 new units a year in urban communities, and we have vastly surpassed that number in the past 3 years. With our partners, we're addressing demand and seeing positive advancement on affordable housing. We all know more is needed. And while we build up our population downtown and in designated growth areas, we're also remembering the importance of access to wilderness, to nature. We protected last year 519 acres of rugged natural land in the Blue Mountain Birch Cove wilderness area, and I want to thank the Nova Scotia Nature Trust for their support of that. So the numbers tell a story of a city that's growing, that is perhaps weathering the pandemic storm better than almost anybody else. But while I talk to you about numbers, we all know that cities are much more than the sum of their parts. Population, GDP, labor market data, housing starts are important, but they can be a cold calculus. One of the most profoundly moving moments of this incredibly challenging year, for me, was joining thousands of people from all ages and backgrounds in taking a knee on Spring Garden Road in support of Black Lives Matter. As we look to a post-COVID future, as we focus with the partnership on recovery, we must acknowledge that we are called upon to do more for racialized people who have not had the same access to opportunity that others have. I'm so pleased that in September, Council unanimously supported the African Nova Scotian Road to Economic Prosperity Action Plan, which was officially launched a couple of weeks ago. I want to thank the partnership. I want to thank Irvin Carvery. I want to thank Dolly Williams. I want to thank Ayo and Carol Ann and so many people who made that happen. This is a 5-year collaborative strategy to advance priorities for improved prosperity and quality of life. Now, strong public health measures have, and will continue, we hope, delivered us through the worst of COVID. But our willingness to make the health and safety of our people, of our friends, of our family, our highest priority, that says a great deal about us as a people. That same nature is what drove dozens of people to line up day after day when they learned a Mexican immigrant might lose her taco restaurant. It is what led operators of the Chinese takeout at the Seaport Market to donate all of the proceeds of their final day to the IWK. These are the moments that confirm my belief that we will be okay, because we consistently demonstrate a commitment to getting through this crisis together. I believe that we can maintain Halifax's momentum and continue to be one of Canada's most successful and best-loved cities, and to help those who need help the most. So let's get to it. I'll sit down with Patrick. I look forward to hearing the questions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Walaaliok.
Thank you, Mayor. And glad you were able to sit down and we can have a little chat. And we have some questions from the chamber. We have lots of questions that we received in advance from participants. And you'll be pleased to know that although I don't know, you didn't run for the Liberal leadership. But
That's true.
That's true. But I do want you to know that you have a bigger audience today than we had with the Premier a couple of weeks ago. Does that make you second guess your decision?
No, not at all. And by the way, I would join you in thanking Premier McNeill.
Right.
He's a friend, he's a leader, he's somebody I have great time for, who I think has served this province well. And in the last year, obviously, his leadership with Dr. Strang and others has really been hard to measure in terms of the impact, not only in terms of the measures that they brought in, but the comfort that they brought to Nova Scotians through honesty,
Right.
telling the story. And I think it's inspired other people, and I want to thank you as well in the chamber. And people may not know that I had a COVID test a couple of weeks, and it was you that gave it to me. It was all legitimate. You were all dressed up in your stuff, and
I was in the full gown. I was in
Yeah.
the full gown. Yes, they taught us how to do the test. I was medically supervised for the first 10 tests by a doctor, Dr. Lisa Barrett, in fact, and then I was able to go out on my own and just randomly pick people to do COVID tests on. And you were one of the volunteers who showed up to get a test. And I will say, getting tests randomly and doing it in downtown Halifax, which is one of the locations, that I think it's happening again this weekend on Saturday at least, from around 3 o'clock until 10:30. It's another way that we can guard ourselves from COVID
Right.
by having those random tests. So thank you for coming over.
well, you were the one that called me and said, look, are you interested in doing this? And I said, absolutely. And it was also a lot of the retail operations, the restaurateurs downtown with you.
Right.
I think Joe from Dirty Nelly's was there, and others taking responsibility, as they did back before Christmas when the second wave was coming upon us, and they voluntarily said, look, we need to stop this in the bud. So
Right.
people like Gord Stewart, Luke Herzjavac, and others who lead that industry, and people really took the leadership. And thank you to you for the work you've done.
Yeah, no, it was great. So let's talk a little bit about that. I have a whole lot of questions. I'm just going to kind of randomly go through them. But I think one of the first questions is, what are you looking forward to as we kind of move to perhaps vaccinations? We've been exceptionally fortunate. I won't say it's all luck. It's a lot of hard work too, to kind of be where we are in Nova Scotia. But what are you foreseeing for the summer and for the fall and for the coming the next year, I suppose, as you look forward a little bit?
Well, I think we're all trying to figure out exactly how do we come out of this, and you've done a lot of work on this. And I want to thank the partnership, who are our economic development agency, for this economic road to recovery that they've taken us through 3 stages. At the beginning when it was really crisis, a transition period, and we're now going to move into sort of how do we deal with COVID after the fact. So first of all, what I'm looking for is I think that the growth of Halifax will continue. People have always liked to come to Halifax as a place to visit, and a lot of people have come here and to set up. But when companies are coming here during COVID, it tells a number of things. First of all, we have a good business environment, but secondly, people appreciate the safety and the ability to do their business in a city like Halifax. And I believe you'll see more and more, if people think they can work from anywhere, I think more people will choose to work from Halifax. And as a city, when I speak about the inequity of COVID, that's the most difficult thing. Because some people have done fine. The liquor store has done fine, but the restaurants haven't. And Sobeys seems to have done okay, and Superstore, but the restaurants have not. Some retailers have done well, but many others have been hurt significantly. So I think we all have to try to figure out, we're not finished with the business closings by any stretch. There are people who've been hanging on, and we're going to see some more bad news. But trying to figure out what the city plays, what our role is in supporting the work that the feds have done through CERB and SECRA and all the different programs that they've had, and the province has done, and they've done some work to help us, for example, in terms of hoteliers who have 10% capacity, and how do they pay a property tax. So figuring out how we all work together, and I think just about every problem in the world can be solved if you do a couple of things. If you have goodwill, and if you kind of ignore the jurisdictional issues until you know what we can do, and then we'll come in and say this is what we can do. So I think Halifax will continue to grow, I think in the short term, mid term, and in the long term, but we need to support those who've hurt the most.
So when you talk about the growth, and you mentioned the 9,000 new residents for Halifax, which is amazing and spectacular, and I know the business community is happy. Sort of the real estate community is very happy right now because houses are moving very quickly. But it does put some people in an unfortunate position where they find housing unaffordable. And it's not just a pandemic issue. I mean, there were folks who believed that housing was unaffordable before as well.
Absolutely.
So, how does the city help people who need to find affordable housing, and what can you do, knowing that there is a good deal of responsibility with the province as well, but what can the city do to kind of help with that?
So I think that's the question. What can we do? So we can say, yeah, it's not our responsibility. I've always said about housing, that when it comes to housing, the feds have the money, the province have the jurisdiction, but the cities have the problems. And that continues to be the case. But there's a lot of things we can do. So I remember, and every year when I come to this address, I always, try to pump people up about how things are, but I always caution people that economic growth needs to be just and it needs to be sustainable to be effective. And so a number of years ago, as you would know, Mark Fraser, who was the chair of the board, joined the Poverty Solutions Task Force that I set up with Sarah Napier off the United Way, and we came out with 120-some recommendations, some of which we've already done on things like transit and food security and housing, but there's more that needs to be done. As a city, we can actually impact housing affordability in a number of different ways. So we don't do rent control or things like that, but we can look at the costs of building affordable housing and say, what can we do? So we're looking at the permits and fees that we charge. Do we need to charge those on affordable housing? I don't think so. What is the impact of Airbnb on affordable housing? We want people, as you will have seen this week, a lot of the houses that are being sold are from people who are coming from other places. We want people to come here, buy a house, but don't buy 20 units and rent out 19 of them when we have people who can't afford the housing they need. We went through what was a pretty controversial process last year on secondary and backyard suites to allow people to improve the density in their neighborhoods and hopefully bring down the cost of housing for attainable housing by building more in their backyards. So, and of course, one of the things we just did, and I mentioned it in the words that I had, is that we said, we have land. We have some land. Let's use that land in a strategic way to help housing. So for example, in Dartmouth North, we sold 3 lots for $1 a piece to the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, and I think it's called True North Housing. Make sure that we build affordable housing in those areas that people can really afford. And so the whole housing spectrum is the issue. We need to help those who are living in these makeshift accommodations or people who are living in shelters. Way Mason brought forward a motion to council this week to work with Shelter Nova Scotia to see if we can help them expand on the spot that they are now using municipal land. That's really important for people who need help the most. And then there's other things, and people forget that there's a whole spectrum. We've done a great job of densifying the core of Halifax, but we now have areas, growth areas like Port Wallace and parts of Bedford and other parts of Dartmouth that we need to get people into. We need to get that development going, and we need to make sure that when you have 9,000, 10,000, or maybe more than that in the years to come coming, and we're building 400 to 4,200 units a year, maybe it's 2 people a unit, maybe it's not, but we're not in any danger of having more units available than people anytime soon. So those are all things we can do.
So I just want to pick up on that. I mean, you mentioned the over 4,000 units that have been approved and moving forward, but we are, and thankfully, I guess we can thank our friends at the Halifax Partnership for a lot of this. But with new companies coming and with people who are just saying, I can work from anywhere, so I'm going to work from Halifax or somewhere in Nova Scotia because I should. Why would I be in, with all due respect to downtown Toronto, we've all been there. It's a lovely place, but it's nice to have a little bit of property too, and it's nice to be able to go outside. So, is there something we can do to accelerate that? Is there a way to get to 8,000 units? Is there a way to say, let's add development officers who can, move some of this through in the next 2 years, since we expect to have this, significant increase in population continuing?
Well, if we needed to do that, I think we would. You mentioned the Chamber's asks, keep the tax rate down, but spend on this, and this. I mean, that's incongruous, to be honest with you. And,
Right.
If we're going to do all these things and add all these people, then our costs are going to go up. I think that our planning department have done a good job. I don't think it's a matter of not having the right number of people in there. I think Kelly Dente, Steve Higgins, and Eric Lucic are really on top. We've got some amazing progressive planners. One of the things I really enjoy at council is when we do a public hearing, seeing some of the younger planners that are coming towards on council. We're developing a very good group of young planners. But I do think that we need to say, okay, for a long time we densified the core. When I was elected, that was the goal everybody had. There was a really good alliance, the HRM Alliance that you may recall.
Yep.
It was a group of business associations, it was the Trails people, all of whom had different priorities, but all agreed on what the main thrust should be. Densify the core, have growth communities outside, better transit, and protect green space. We're doing that. And I think now if you take a look at a place like Port Wallace on the east end of Dartmouth, not far from where I live, there's a real potential for us. There's an environmental issue with that, but there's a potential there. And I've talked to other developers who have pretty cool plans, and they know what we want to do, right? That we're not going to be building as many of the huge single-family houses on big lots that we used to do, but there's an opportunity to bring density through development that the development community are very supportive of. And I think by and large our planners have done a really good job on that, but that's going to have to be accelerated.
Okay, great. You mentioned environment, and I know you were speaking about something else, during your talk. But let's talk about the Halifax climate plan for a moment. Did the pandemic impact that, or do you see the pandemic impacting that, or are we in a place where the acceleration, it seems, of climate change is going to impact the Halifax plan?
Absolutely not. We are in a health crisis that has brought an economic crisis.
Right.
We have a social justice crisis that wasn't created but sort of spun onto the national spotlight through things like George Floyd in Minneapolis and Kenosha, Milwaukee. We have our own history of systemic racism here in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. So you got the health crisis, the economic crisis, the social justice crisis, but the existential crisis that has been going on for a while and will continue is the climate crisis. We passed Halifax during COVID. We set ambitious targets during COVID. We've had some great meetings that the partnership has put together with the CEOs in the community. We're setting up a mayor's task force on the green economy. And I got to give a shout out, and you'll probably appreciate this, to Shannon Miedema in HRM and our planning folks, Kelly Dente and everybody else who've been supported this. But we have an amazingly progressive leader in our municipality, Shannon, who has done a great deal of work on putting this together, not by herself. Two things. She worked with all of HRM. If there was a criticism I had before I became mayor 100 years ago of HRM, it was that things, to me, from outside, seemed to be very siloed. We don't do that anymore. So Shannon worked with everybody in planning and transportation and Parks and Rec and everybody else and put together this plan. And we passed it last June. And we said, okay, it was called 2050 back then, you may recall. It was called Halifax 2050. It's not called 2050 anymore. And I'm glad. Somebody I got to know a little bit the last couple of years, Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, who's done a ton of stuff, ran for president, but done a ton of stuff on the environment, said when a politician talks to you about improving the environment by 2050, tell her or him to go away, because they likely won't be alive and they certainly won't be in power then. So we have to accelerate that, and our own plan for our municipal operations is for 2030. Electrification of fleet, the buildings. Where are we building? Sea level and storm surge and those things which are very much a part of our life here in Halifax. What are we doing about those? So no, Halifax wasn't slowed down. In fact, we've hired people. When we recast our budget last year, I don't know how many governments did that. Municipal governments did.
They had to.
Yeah, exactly. we said to 1,480 people, we're not going to hire you this year. Some of them were part-time, as you saw in those numbers, but they had families and it was not an easy thing to do. But we recast the budget, but we said we're not going to slow down on Halifax 2050. We can't. And all these other aspects of our plans, the integrated mobility plan, the green network plan, the regional plan, All of those things are incorporated in Halifax, and I think it's, personally, of what I've seen, the best municipal climate change adaptation plan that I've seen.
That's great. Okay. Well, I think we're all looking forward to it. I'm going to jump into some of the audience questions here. What will you do, or will the city do ultimately, to support youth in launching new businesses in Halifax as part of the recovery from COVID-19?
So I don't want to just, tell stories all the time, but I do want to say this, that when I was elected, I started something that was called the Mayor's Welcome Reception for International Students. And it came out of a partnership that we started with the university presidents, all university presidents, and Don Bureau, who's been a great participant in it as well. And we said, what is the goal? Because I never felt that we took advantage of our education. I think we should be the education capital of Canada. So we started these meetings, and everybody showed up, and our first goal was youth attraction and retention. We started this international reception for new first-year students. And I heard from people that first year we did it, at Pier 21. And thanks to the Westin, by the way, for hosting us here today. We appreciate the opportunity to do this. It was at Pier 21, and so many young people from around the world came up to me and said, Mr. Mayor, we love it here, but we don't have any jobs. Well, 5 years later, that was a whole lot less of an issue because we have turned the corner on youth employment. We're bringing young people here from around the world. It's gotten a lot better. The partnership has things like the Connector program. We invested as a city, directly put money into Volta in the Innovation Center because we believe that's sort of a magnet for young talent. And if you look at what Volta has spun out, hiring young people, whether it's Proposify or Dash Hudson or any number of companies, those opportunities exist. There's a young lady that, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her, named Joyce Liu, who is from China, who has a great video production company here in Halifax. I was talking to her last week, and she's sort of emblematic of people from around the world who come here, and they're prepared to start off. She may not want to work for somebody else. She may want to be an innovator on her own, and then she will hire other people. And I think through the Connector program, through the partnership, through things like Volta, we can help. We do have programs within the city to help young people, and which I think is doing some great work to develop young entrepreneurs, and I think that that'll be the future of the city.
That's great. Another question. The Halifax and Dartmouth waterfronts have become thriving hubs of imaginative amenities and activity, but Bedford's looking pretty quiet, and yet DeWolf Park is overused and often quite crowded. Is there some hope that we can see unique and imaginative Bedford waterfront public and commercial development and an expansion of public space? Yeah, very much so. Timmy Outhheader talks about this a great deal. We do see the potential in Bedford. Now, we will work with our partners at Develop Nova Scotia, who own a great deal of the land there. But I think if you look out, 5 to 10 years in Bedford, which is a thriving community, but I think you will see a ferry docked there, taking people in and out of the city to reduce the traffic congestion. I think you'll see probably our Bedford Library. We're looking at a new Bedford Library. That's the prime place that we want to see it happening. And I think that the growth of that area is just natural. And I think that we're looking at the transit strategies now to make sure that we don't overbuild before we start relieving some of the congestion on the Bedford Highway, for example. That has to be part of it, but we've approved a number of plans to have a look at that. And I want to say on Dartmouth's side, it's not that long ago that Dartmouth wasn't thriving downtown. A number of things happened in Dartmouth. It's pretty close to my heart. One of them was Francis Ferris deciding that he was going to build King's Wharf in downtown Dartmouth and bring people downtown to live. Big risk. He did it. Faced opposition. I mean, I was an MP at the time, and there were people that thought that the federal government shouldn't support him because he did some infill. What that's done is created, or been part of, I should say, because downtown Dartmouth now is such a thriving hub of young, bright businesses, from Kept to Lake City Cider to the Canteen. People are coming to Dartmouth, I say as a Dartmouthian, who never used to come to Dartmouth. And they're doing it because you have this entrepreneurial gusto that's happening down there. And they support each other, and they work well, and they're building the whole community piece by piece. And
And I would also say Tim Rosesco at the downtown Dartmouth bid. The bids across the municipality, whether it's Michelle in Sackville or a whole host of others, are really working hard to create vibrant areas outside of the downtowns, but on our main streets.
Right. Well, and I know the bids are watching us today, and you're absolutely right. I mean, they perform a real service to the communities, and particularly over the last year, during pandemic, trying to support their members and keep them up to date and keep them informed. So on that note, I'd love to know what additional supports, if any, would be available to support small businesses who are struggling with revenue loss to help them get through the short term and prevent them closing. For instance, and I think very sadly, we saw Nova Scotia Crystal announce their closure. Is there anything that can be done from the municipality?
Well, it's so sad to see Nova Scotia Crystal stop, but I can't stop the pandemic and I can't make the cruise ships come back. So I think one of the things we all need to do is work together, but recognize what we can and can't do. And I think our staff at HRM, Tanya Davis and people like that who worked in the streets last year, Victoria Horn, came up with some pretty good ideas. And one thing I really liked that we did last year, Patrick, was we didn't know if these things would work. Right. But instead of saying, okay, we don't know if it's going to work, we tried things. And some people didn't like traffic calming. Some people didn't like the extension of patios. And when you extend a patio, you got to make sure you keep your disability access for people who are in wheelchairs. So all those things are important. I see us doing more of that this year, being more creative. Certainly on the fees is something that we can help on patios. And getting people, personally, we try to support local, and collectively doing all those things to support those vibrant areas. I think we can do more.
So, I mean, there was a lot of panic, I think, among a lot of municipalities, Halifax included, a year ago, almost a year ago now, I suppose, when the pandemic took hold and there was a lot of worry about taxes and those kinds of things. In the end, most taxes were paid, I think it's probably fair to say. But the recent assessments were based on the 2019 property value. So 2020 is coming. Are you concerned about next year and what those assessments might mean and what that might mean to the revenue, I suppose, for the city?
Always concerned about that, but we do see continued growth, and that's a positive thing. We didn't expect that the assessments commercially would be up at all this year. We knew that residential would be up a little bit. Commercial was, and so I'm concerned about it. Absolutely. For people who don't understand municipal finance, which is 99% of people, just take into account the value of the buildings and then the tax rate that goes on them. We don't get people's income statements and assess income tax. All we can look at is the property that they're in, and targeting support to people who are in there but maybe renting is a little bit more difficult. Yes, we've always said that the out years on the assessment will be problematic. On the other hand, we've seen very strong deed transfer revenue. And what I believe and have said many times in our budget discussions is that the dividend of our growth hasn't shown up in commercial assessments. It's shown up in deed transfer. In other words, companies are buying properties because they see opportunity in Halifax. And to me, that's a bit of a cushion against whatever happens on the commercial marketplace.
So you're a member, I think, of the Big City Mayors Caucus. Cities, this is kind of inside political talk, I suppose, but cities are creatures of the province, meaning there's a lot of laws that the provinces are the only ones that they can set. And yet cities have become bigger and bigger. So the GDP is much bigger, the populations are much bigger. If we look to Halifax, are there some things that the province should cede to the city so the city can take care of them, so that the city doesn't have to keep going back to the province to ask for permission on things?
From your lips to God's or the Creator's ears, Patrick. Look, we all have our own issues to deal with, and it's not easy being in provincial government these days either. Of all the taxes collected in Canada, 8% are collected by municipalities, but we have 60% of the infrastructure, roads and bridges and things like that. So our hands are tied. I think all major cities in Canada would have the same message, which is take the handcuffs off, let us do economic development. We have to get elected too. We have to answer to the people. It makes no sense for us to be going back and forth. Why does it make sense for the city to get the province to take a while to say that we could bring in campaign finance reform for elections? That's crazy. And I don't think it should, I think we should be able to allow permanent residents to vote in municipal elections. I'll remind you, Patrick, I'm not sure if you were CEO then, but when I brought that to council, that proposal to let permanent residents vote in municipal elections, it was the chamber quickie question back at the time, and over 95% of members said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. So yeah, there's things the province can do. We have a great relationship with the province. It sometimes, you might sometimes think it's completely adversarial. It's not. We've had some great funding arrangements with Premier McNeil and with his government, and I'm not sure if you're going to ask about the new Premier, but the new Premier, I think, has goals and objectives that are very much aligned with what we have in the city, and I've talked to him briefly about it. We'll be talking again. But, you know, we have to go to the province for speed limits. We have to go to the province for, you know, any number of things that people wouldn't think we have to go to the province on. And certainly in terms of housing, inclusionary zoning would be one that we would like to work with the province on. We think that these are things that are win-wins for us and the province, and more and more we'd like to have the power to do some of those things. We're not going to abuse it. We never have. So yeah, that's an issue for all of us.
Well, and we would certainly, at the Chamber, agree with you on permanent residence, as we did then, as members did then, and we would absolutely agree on that now. You did mention the new Premier, so we do have a new Premier. We had three candidates.
Not yet, but soon.
It was soon, you're right. We have a Premier-elect, I suppose. So there were three candidates. I mean, we were unbiased at the Chamber, but I will say that Ian Rankin said he would allow dogs on patios. So if I could have voted, I would have voted for that for sure. But we're unbiased, so that was just one thing that appealed to me. Was there anything that appealed to you, I think, in either Premier-elect Rankin's platform or some of the other platforms that you think he should adopt?
Yeah. Well, I think that Ian's biggest commitment, as I've known him, has been to the absolute priority of climate and dealing with climate change. He knows it. He was Minister of Environment. He led significant change. I think that he will look at Halifax and say, you know what, that's good. Let's create green jobs. Let's deal with this issue. Let's not push it down the road. Let's deal with this now. But he's also been outspokenly supportive of things like the electrification of transit. And we need the provincial government to play in that. So we have a plan to electrify our fleet. If you look at Halifax, which was adopted just in June of last year, the goal was to get, I think, to 50% electrification of our transit fleet by 2028. We now think we can do 100% much quicker than that, but it's about money. We've passed at council a plan, $600 to $700 million, that we need the other orders of government. And this new transit announcement yesterday, so thank you to the federal government, to Andy Fillmore and Darren Fisher and those folks who I know were pushing for that kind of thing, is helpful, and I think the province will help us. But yeah, so to get back to the Premier-elect Rankin, he's also spoken very well about social justice and racialized communities, and a whole host of things. I think that he'll be a willing partner and will be a worthy successor.
Great. Now, here's an interesting question. Given the way Halifax is growing economically and demographically, do you have any plans to expand the HRM county limits to sustain this growth and increase the attractiveness of Halifax and HRM?
No.
Are we not big enough yet?
We are the biggest physical municipality in the solar system, certainly in Canada. But we're the size of Prince Edward Island. Now, there are people who ask the opposite of that, and you've probably heard them ask that question. And Don Mills is one of those guys who said, look, it should just be a tighter community. We are what we are, and we should take advantage of the great benefits of being a large municipality and having the industries that we have in the downtown and the suburbs, but also all through HRM. And we have great communities. We have the opportunity to take advantage of a vibrant downtown, and not just the beauty of outside HRM, but the economic opportunities that exist in rural Nova Scotia. We set up a planning office a number of years ago. I think there's great opportunities in rural HRM. But no, I don't think making it bigger. I want to cooperate with our neighbors. I don't want to sort of assume that we could do it better. I mean, they're doing some great things. If you look at other cities in Nova Scotia, the Bridgewater's on climate, and a ton of stuff is happening. So no, I think we're big enough. Let's just work together.
Okay, that's great. Councillors, The mayor, people may not know, you don't have, a super veto or anything at council. How do you get things done with the actually number of councillors that we have, which is actually much smaller than the number of MLAs that
Correct.
Halifax has?
Yeah.
Much smaller.
Correct.
But how do you get things done as mayor with the councillors and with the council?
So municipal, there's a couple of things different. One is what you said, which is that the mayor doesn't have a cabinet. The mayor, there are some cities where that happens, even in Canada, where the executive committee is chosen by the mayor and rams things through. That's not the way we do it. It would be easier, but it wouldn't be better. What you have to do now as a mayor or a councillor is you have to make a case and use your political capital. I've always felt that political capital, if you don't use it, it doesn't accumulate, it withers. So you have to find allies that you can work with. And when I look back at the powers that are recorded a mayor in the Charter or the Municipal Government Act, you might think you don't have very much. But when I look at the things that I said I wanted to do when I became mayor, a lot of those things we've been able to do working with willing partners on council. And this new council is a very interesting council. They have to learn they got elected in a pandemic. They go right into budget meetings. And they're learning and they're growing in their ability to serve their residents. I see it every day. They just went through their first kind of snowstorm. All the old veteran councillors were saying, wait till you go through snow and see how people feel about snow in this municipality. And now they've kind of gone through that. And I was so proud this week, the councillors like Councillor Lovelace and Purdy and Cuddle and Kent and others, at the beginning of council, thanking our snow clearing crews for the work they did. We have got an amazing staff at HRM. And if council and staff work together, and under the leadership of Jacques Dubé, who's done a tremendous job on leading initiatives of council, we get stuff done. So, but I think the answer to your question is you have to work with other councillors and you have to set your priorities and make your case and make it in public. That's how we do it. And you get stuff done.
That's great. What do you think we have left as big opportunities? What opportunities are there for Halifax?
I think there's a ton of opportunities for Halifax. It's a funny thing because when I was first elected mayor, I felt like I was always trying to convince people things were better than they were. Now it's almost like we're trying to convince people that, not to get ahead of yourselves. But the future of Halifax will be as a diverse municipality, an increasingly diverse municipality, a municipality that has a great pride of place. And I think that we will grow. I think we'll be more diverse in the years to come than we are now. We're certainly a lot more diverse than we were a few years ago. I think we'll have the potential, and I believe we will be one of the greenest cities in Canada. We will have a vibrant downtown, and increasingly we'll have complete communities outside of the core connected by an ever better system of transit where people live together regardless of age or color, background. I see it starting, and I truly believe that, where everybody has a place to sleep at night, and we have as much opportunity as opportunity allows, collectively, but also individually.
I think, I agree with many of the things you just that you just stated.
Which ones do you not agree with?
We'll get back to the tax issue later. I agree with many of the things that you said. So, I think Halifax has an amazing future ahead of it. It's always had that fabulous potential. It does seem to me that the recognition, maybe it took a pandemic to recognize it, although, we had the growth, we had population growth, we had companies coming to Halifax, but it does seem that we're really on that upward slope. And that's a wonderful thing.
It's a tremendous feeling. Patrick, you may have this opportunity as well, but I get through the partnership through Wendy and Nancy Phillips, the VP who helps to bring people here, and others at the partnership. I often get to meet companies who are thinking of coming to Halifax. I love that because I get to sell the city, and every mayor is a combination of bravado and bullcrap, and you love to talk about your city. And I tell people, believe about 65% of what a mayor tells you. In my case, maybe 70. But I will never lie to somebody, but I love to talk about our city. And what I find from these organizations, including some who've come here very recently, it's not just the cost of living. It's not just the fact that there's talent here. It's not just the fact that you can be downtown and then be in a canoe half an hour later. They like the fact that we're committed to diversity and inclusion. A lot of them have the same values as companies, and the environment People want to be somewhere where they know that there's a general belief that we have to accept the challenge of climate. And I think that that will continue to be the case.
So, I mean, you are the luckiest man in the world to be the mayor of the city of Halifax. Is that, I don't know if there's a statement or a question.
Well, if I had a dream job, it would be president of the Chamber of Commerce of Halifax. You know, a growing community. I love my work. I find it challenging and I find it frustrating. And one of the things about being mayor is I don't know when I go into the office what I'm going to be talking about that day, because the mayor gets asked questions that other politicians don't. But I like that. I find that you know, a challenge, and it's good. I do consider myself very fortunate. I do have a job. There are probably other things I could have considered last year. I wanted another term as mayor, and then we'll see what happens from there. But I do have to say, it's not the same without the people. You know, the chamber had some events last summer, kind of set the stage safely, and I loved that because you're back with people. I miss that. I get my energy from people, like many other people do. And I can't wait to get back into a place where I'm able to, you know, get out and be with people on a more regular basis. But until then, that's got to be our inspiration for doing the right things to get us there. It's why we have to, you know, wear our mask. It's why we have to keep our social distance. It's why I encourage people to go out and get tested at some of these rapid pop-up sites. Because the end goal is where we want to get, which is to be a community where we're all living happily and comfortably together.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mayor Savage. Really appreciate it. That's all the time we have today, although I could keep going forever. I do have lots of questions, but
you mentioned taxes. I don't think we're that far apart on taxes.
I don't think we are either, but we'll talk about that after. We'll settle it.
There's an opportunity for us, but you know, things do cost money and we have big investments coming up. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months. We haven't set the tax rate yet. I just make that point. Tax rate's not set. Everybody says, oh, it's 1.9. It's not set yet. We're working towards setting it in a very open and transparent way.
Well, and we appreciate the opportunity to have that conversation. I was with council yesterday for half an hour having just that conversation.
Yes, you were.
So
thank you.
Thanks very much for that. So, and again, thank you very much, Mayor Savage, for your leadership throughout this pandemic. We really appreciate it. I know the citizens of Halifax appreciate it as well. And we look forward to discussing our recommendations from the Chamber with you and your team as we move forward. I very much want to thank our opening performers, Sarah Prosper, and of course, Dominique Awaiga, for presenting today. They did a wonderful job. And thank you to our presenting sponsor, RBC, for supporting today's event and making it available and free to all 600 of our guests. This has been our biggest virtual event ever. So thank you. Oh, sorry,
I can say one thing.
Yet.
So the World Bank was also a big supporter of the Road to Prosperity for the African Nova Scotian community.
Right.
Big work, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, which I watched on TV, I guess on Zoom just a couple of weeks ago, which is a wonderful start. Thank you. Join us next week for our first virtual Wonder Woman conference featuring Anne Devine of Ashanti Leadership as our host and Dr. Ingrid Waldron, author of There's Something in the Water, as our keynote. And now a final thank you to our event partner, the Halifax Partnership, and I will hand it over to Wendy Luther for her closing remarks. Wendy.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Mayor, for your leadership in making Halifax one of the world's best mid-sized cities. Your commitment to rolling up the best mid-sized city, and your commitment to rolling up your sleeves and to do the work required to continuously improve our city is a major part of Halifax's success. Our challenge to everyone joining us today is that we continue to work together to build on the momentum the Mayor shared in his remarks and address head-on the new challenges and opportunities that we've seen as a result of both COVID-19 and the record growth we were experiencing before this health and economic crisis. We will be working with the Halifax Chamber, our investors, business leaders, and partner organizations across the city as we continue to implement the Economic Response and Recovery Plan and prepare for Halifax's continued growth. We will be promoting opportunities to get involved on our Halifax Partnership website, and thank you in advance for lending your voice to this important work. A thank you to the Westin Nova Scotian for hosting us here today in person. And finally, a big thank you to Chris Ronald and RBC for your support in making today's event possible. And a thank you to Patrick Sullivan and the Halifax Chamber of Commerce team for co-hosting with us. Good afternoon, and be well, everyone.
Thank you.